The Galactic Military Academy sat in the middle of empty space, far from any star or planet. It was a massive station made of metal and glass, spinning slowly in the darkness. Thousands of cadets from more than 40 different species lived and trained here. They came from worlds of ice and worlds of fire, from planets with 3 suns and moons that never stopped raining. They were all different, but they had one thing in common. They all wanted to become soldiers. Kang Do-yoon was one of the few humans at the academy. He was 23 years old, with short black hair and tired eyes that always seemed to be thinking about something far away. He was not the strongest cadet, not the fastest, and certainly not the loudest. When other species looked at humans, they often wondered how such small, soft creatures had survived long enough to reach the stars. But Do-yoon had something that made his instructors pay attention. He asked questions. Not simple questions, but the kind of questions that made teachers stop and think. The kind that sometimes made them uncomfortable. On this particular morning, Do-yoon walked into Tactical Theory Hall 7 and took his usual seat in the 3rd row. The hall was large, with seats rising up like stairs in a theater. Holographic displays floated at the front, ready to show whatever horrors the day's lesson would bring. The seats around him slowly filled with cadets of all shapes and sizes. To his left sat Brix, a Tellurian. Tellurians looked somewhat like tall insects, with 4 arms, 2 legs, and antennae that moved when they were thinking or feeling strong emotions. Brix's shell was a deep blue color, and he was one of the few aliens who had become something like a friend to Do-yoon. "You look tired," Brix said, his antennae twitching with concern. "Couldn't sleep," Do-yoon replied. "Had an idea. Couldn't let it go." "What kind of idea?" Before Do-yoon could answer, the doors at the front of the hall opened, and silence fell over the room. Instructor Velroth had arrived. Velroth was a Korathi, and the Korathi were one of the oldest warrior species in the galaxy. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 6 powerful arms and a face that looked like it was carved from stone. His eyes were black and showed no emotion. In his 200 years as a soldier and teacher, he had seen more death than most cadets could imagine. He had fought in wars that lasted centuries. He had watched stars die. When Velroth spoke, everyone listened. "Today," he said, his voice deep and rough, "we discuss existential threats. Enemies that cannot be defeated. Enemies that you must learn to recognize so that you will know when to run." He raised one of his arms and touched a control panel. The holographic displays flickered, and then an image appeared that made several cadets gasp. It was darkness. But it was not normal darkness. It was a shape made of nothing, a hole in reality itself. It seemed to pull at the light around it, bending and twisting the image. Just looking at it made Do-yoon feel cold. "This," Velroth said, "is a holoburn." The name moved through the room like a whisper of fear. Some of the older cadets had heard stories. Some had lost family to this thing. "The holoburn come from the space between galaxies," Velroth continued. "The empty void where nothing exists. We do not know if they are alive in any way that we understand. They do not eat. They do not breathe. They do not think, as far as we can tell. They simply consume." He touched the control panel again, and the image changed. Now it showed a planet, green and blue and beautiful. Then, in a time-lapse recording, the holoburn appeared at the edge of the atmosphere. Over the course of 6 hours, the planet changed. The blue oceans turned gray. The green forest became brown, then black, then nothing. By the end, the planet was a dead rock, stripped of everything. 17 colony worlds, Velroth said. 400 million lives. Gone in the past 10 years alone. A Vendak cadet in the front row raised his massive hand. The Vendak were large, muscular beings with thick gray skin. "Instructor, what weapons have been used against them?" "All of them," Velroth replied. Plasma cannons, antimatter missiles, singularity bombs. The Confederacy once detonated a star in the path of a holoburn, hoping the supernova would destroy it. He paused. The holoburn absorbed the explosion and grew larger. The room was very quiet. No weapon can halt it, Velroth said, and his voice left no room for argument. The holoburn absorbs all forms of energy. Heat, light, radiation, kinetic force. Everything we throw at it only makes it stronger. Your only option when facing a holoburn is evacuation. Run. Save who you can. Engagement means death. Most of the cadets nodded. The Elysians, tall and graceful beings with silver skin and eyes that could see possible futures, exchanged knowing looks. They had probably already seen this lesson in their visions. The Veth cadets, creatures made of living crystal, dimmed their inner light in resignation. But in the third row, Dohyun opened a second screen on his tablet. While the instructor continued talking about evacuation protocols and early warning systems, Dohyun began pulling up old research files. Energy absorption rates, thermal dynamics, theoretical limits of matter conversion. Brix noticed and leaned closer. What are you doing? Dohyun did not look up from his screen. Taking notes. Those are not notes. Those are research papers on quantum energy states. Advanced notes. Brix's antennae flattened against his head, a sign of worry. Dohyun, you heard the instructor. The holoburn cannot be stopped. This is not a problem to solve. This is a fact to accept. Maybe, Dohyun said quietly. But something has been bothering me. What? Dohyun finally looked up, his eyes meeting Brix's compound gaze. Everything has a limit. Every container can only hold so much before it breaks. Every stomach can only eat so much before it bursts. The instructor said the holoburn absorbs energy, but he did not say it can absorb infinite energy. Brix stared at him. You are thinking of overloading it? I am thinking that no one has tried the right approach. They have been feeding it slowly. Sustained attacks over hours and days. But what if you gave it everything at once? Not a meal, but an ocean poured down its throat in a single second. That is insane, probably. Brix was quiet for a moment. Then his antennae twitched again. This time in a pattern Dohyun had learned meant curiosity. You really think there might be a way? Dohyun turned back to his tablet. I think everyone has been so busy accepting that it cannot be done that no one has really tried. And I think humans are too stubborn to accept things without proof. The lesson continued for another hour. Velroth covered evacuation routes, emergency beacon protocols, and the early warning signs of holoburn activity. He showed recordings of brave soldiers who had tried to fight and failed. He made sure every cadet understood that sometimes running was the only option. When the class ended, cadets filed out of the hall, talking in quiet voices about what they had seen. Dohyun stayed in his seat, still reading, still calculating. Velroth noticed. The old Carthy walked up the stairs to where the human sat, his 6 arms folded across his chest. Cadet Kang. Dohyun looked up quickly and closed his tablet. Instructor, you seemed distracted during my lesson. I was paying attention, sir. You were doing research on energy absorption theory. Dohyun was surprised. He had thought he was being subtle. You noticed. I notice everything in my classroom. Velroth's black eyes studied the young human. You think you can find a way to kill a holoburn? It was not a question. Dohyun considered lying, but there was no point. I think no one has found the right method yet. Many have tried. Yes, sir. They are all dead. Yes, sir. Velroth was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, something changed in his expression. It was not a smile, not exactly, but something close to respect. Humans, he said. I have been teaching at this academy for 200 years. I have trained soldiers from every species in the Confederacy. And only humans look at an impossible enemy and think, I just need to find the right angle. Is that a compliment, sir? It is an observation. Volroth turned to leave, but stopped at the door. Do not let your stubbornness get you killed, Cadet Kang. The galaxy needs soldiers who can think. But it also needs soldiers who know when to retreat. He left. Do-Yoon sat alone in the empty hall, surrounded by floating holographic displays that still showed images of dead worlds. He looked at them for a long time. Then he opened his tablet again and continued his research. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice told him that Volroth was right, that some enemies could not be beaten, that some problems had no solutions. But another voice, the voice that had driven humans to cross oceans and climb mountains and reach for the stars, that voice said something different. It said, not yet. The answers were out there. He just had to find them. 3 weeks passed after the lesson about the Holobar. Do-Yoon spent every free moment in the Academy's library, reading old reports and studying failed missions. He filled notebooks with calculations and theories. He barely slept. His friends started to worry. But then the annual survival simulation began, and he had to put his research aside. The survival simulation was the hardest test at the Galactic Military Academy. Every year, cadets were divided into small squads and dropped onto different moons and planets. They had to survive for 72 hours with limited supplies while completing a series of objectives. It was meant to test everything: strength, intelligence, teamwork, and the ability to make hard decisions under pressure. Do-Yoon's squad had 5 members. First was Yoon Sujin, another human. She was 25 with long black hair that she kept tied back in a tight braid. She was a demolition specialist, trained to blow things up in creative ways. She had a sharp tongue and no patience for fools. But Do-Yoon had learned that beneath her rough exterior, she cared deeply about her squad mates. Second was Brix, the Tellurian. His specialty was communications and technology. If something had wires or code, Brix could make it do what he wanted. His blue shell had grown darker over the years of training, a sign of maturity in his species. Third was Orith, a Vendak. He was massive, nearly 2.5 meters tall, with gray skin as thick as armor and muscles that could bend metal. The Vendak were known for their strength and their strict sense of honor. Orith did not talk much, but when he made a promise, he kept it. Fourth was Lyra, an Elysian. She was tall and slender, with silver skin that seemed to glow faintly in low light. Her eyes were large and pale, and they saw things others could not. Elysians had a limited ability to sense the future, though they called it seeing possibilities rather than seeing what would happen. Lyra was their medical officer, trained to heal wounds and keep them alive. Do-Yoon was the 5th member. His role was tactical analysis. It was his job to look at problems and find solutions. The shuttle dropped them on a barren moon called Keth 7. It was a gray wasteland of rocks and dust, with thin atmosphere and constant wind. The temperature was cold, but survivable with their standard gear. Their objectives were simple: reach 3 checkpoints spread across the moon and retrieve data cores from each one. For the first 2 days, everything went according to plan. They moved across the gray landscape in careful formation, with Orith at the front and Lyra at the back. Brix handled navigation, his antennae picking up signals from the checkpoint beacons. Sujin kept her explosives ready for any obstacles, though there were few. Do-Yoon watched the horizon and thought about patterns. By hour 48, they had completed 2 checkpoints and were moving toward the 3rd. They were tired but confident. The simulation was almost over. That was when everything changed. The first sign was Lyra. She suddenly stopped walking, her silver skin going pale, her large eyes growing wide. Her hands trembled. Lyra? Sujin was the first to notice. What is wrong? Something is coming, Lyra whispered. Something dark. Something hungry. Before anyone could respond, their communication devices crackled to life. It was Instructor Velroth's voice, and he sounded different than Do-hyun had ever heard him. He sounded worried. Attention all cadets. This is an emergency broadcast. The simulation is suspended. I repeat, the simulation is suspended. The squad exchanged confused looks. A juvenile holoburn has breached containment from Research Station, Kappa 12. It is currently moving through this sector. All cadets are ordered to evacuate immediately. Shuttles are being dispatched to extraction points. Make your way to the nearest extraction point and wait for pickup. Do not engage the entity under any circumstances. I repeat, do not engage. The message ended. For a long moment, no one spoke. A holoburn, Brix finally said, his antennae pressed flat against his head. Here, now. It must have escaped from a research facility, Do-hyun said. His mind was already racing, pulling up everything he had learned over the past 3 weeks. They were probably studying it, trying to understand it. And something went wrong. Arth's deep voice rumbled. We follow orders. We go to the extraction point. We evacuate. Agreed, Sujin said. Let us move, now. They started moving. The extraction point was 12 kilometers to the south. At their current pace, they could reach it in 3 hours. The shuttles would be waiting, but Lyra did not move. Wait, she said. Her voice was strange, distant. I see something. I see people. Trapped. Everyone stopped. What do you mean? Do-hyun asked. Lyra closed her eyes. When Elysians focused their abilities, they could sense things that others could not. Possible futures. Hidden truths. She stayed still for several seconds, and when she opened her eyes, there were tears on her silver cheeks. There is a facility. Research Station Kappa 12. It is to the north. 12 people are trapped inside. Scientists, workers. They cannot reach the shuttles. The holoburn is between them and the extraction point. Then they will be rescued by someone else, Orith said. Military forces. Professional soldiers. Not cadets. Lyra shook her head. There is no time. I see their futures. If no one helps them, they will die. All of them. Within 6 hours. The squad was silent. Brix spoke first. We are cadets. We have basic weapons and limited supplies. What can we possibly do against a holoborn? Nothing, Arith said firmly. The answer is nothing. You heard Instructor Velroth 3 weeks ago. No weapon can halt it. We go to the extraction point. But Sujin was looking at Do-hyun. She had known him for 3 years. She had seen him spend weeks researching something no one else thought was possible. Do-hyun, she said quietly, you have been studying this thing. Do you have any ideas? Do-hyun did not answer immediately. He was thinking, running through calculations in his head, remembering everything he had learned. The theories he had developed, the possibilities he had considered. Maybe, he finally said. Maybe? Orith's voice was sharp. You want us to risk our lives on maybe? I want to save 12 people who will definitely die if we do not try. This is not our mission. Our mission was the simulation. Now our mission is survival. We follow orders. Do-hyun looked at the big Vendak. Orith, I understand duty. I respect it. But there are people who need help. Innocent people who did nothing wrong. And we might be the only ones who can reach them in time. The instructor said do not engage. The instructor also said no weapon can halt it. But what if he's wrong? What if no one has found the right approach because everyone gave up too quickly? Arith's gray face was hard to read, but Do-hyun could see conflict in his eyes. The Vendak valued honor above all else. And leaving innocent people to die when you could help them was not honorable. Sujin stepped forward. I am with Do-Yun. I did not become a soldier to run away while people die. Brix's antennae twitched nervously. This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. He paused. But I suppose I cannot let you fools go alone. Everyone looked at Lyra. The Elysian closed her eyes again. This time she stayed silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm. I see many possibilities. Many endings. In some of them, we die. In some of them, we fail and the hollow burn continues. But in some of them, she opened her eyes and looked at Do-Yun. In some of them, we succeed. In some of them, you find a way. You see me succeeding? I see the possibility of it. Nothing is certain, but the possibility exists. Orath stood like a statue, his massive arms crossed. Everyone was waiting for him. Without the Vendak's strength, their chances dropped significantly. Finally, Orath spoke. If we do this and we survive, I'm going to be very angry with all of you. Sujin smiled. You are always angry. True. Orath uncrossed his arms. Fine, but if this fails, I want it noted that I objected. Noted, Do-Yun said. He pulled up his wrist display and began accessing the facility schematics that Brix was already downloading. Now let us talk about how to kill something that is supposed to be unkillable. They gathered in a circle on the gray rocks of the barren moon. Above them, the cold stars watched in silence. Somewhere to the north, a creature made of darkness and hunger was moving toward 12 innocent people and 5 cadets, armed with little more than basic weapons and a theory, began to make a plan. Do-Yun looked at his squad. His friends. They were scared, all of them. He could see it in the way Brix's antennae trembled, in the tightness around Sujin's eyes, in the way Lyra kept glancing toward the north. Even Orath, unshakable Orath, seemed tense. But they were here. They had chosen to stay. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. All right, Do-Yun said. Here is what I know about the hollow burn. And here is what I think we can do. He began to explain. The squad huddled behind a large rock formation, hiding from the cold wind that swept across the barren moon. Do-Yun had pulled up all the data he had gathered over the past 3 weeks, projecting it from his wrist display so everyone could see. Charts, numbers, and diagrams floated in the air between them. The hollow burn absorbs energy, Do-Yun began. That is its nature. That is what it does. Heat, light, kinetic force, radiation. Everything we throw at it becomes food. We know this, Orath said impatiently. This is why fighting it is foolish. Let me finish. Do-Yun pulled up a new diagram. Every system in the universe has limits. A cup can only hold so much water before it overflows. A battery can only store so much power before it explodes. Even a star, as massive as it is, can only contain so much energy before it goes supernova. Sujin leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. You think the hollow burn has a limit? I think everything has a limit. The problem is, no one has ever tested the hollow burn's limit properly. Brix's antennae twitched. The Confederacy detonated a star in front of one. How is that not testing its limit? Because they did it wrong. Do-Yun's voice was excited now, the way it always got when he was explaining something he had figured out. Look at the records. When the star exploded, the hollow burn absorbed the energy over several hours as the shockwave expanded. It was a lot of energy, yes, but it was spread out over time, like drinking from a river. You can drink a lot of water from a river because it comes at you slowly, and you want to make it drink from a waterfall, Lyra said softly. She understood. Not a waterfall. An ocean. All at once, instantly. Do-Yun pulled up another image. This one showing a schematic of Research Station Kappa 12. The facility has a backup reactor. It is not huge, but it is powerful enough to run the entire station for years. And reactors can be overloaded. Sujin caught on immediately. Her eyes widened. You want to blow up the reactor with the holoburn inside. Not blow up. That would just scatter the energy over time. I want to trigger a controlled overload that releases all the reactor's energy in a single instant. A pulse, not an explosion. Orath shook his massive head. This is theory. Guessing. You do not know if it will work. No, I do not know. But I know what will happen if we do nothing. 12 people will die. And eventually, this holoburn will grow larger and kill more. Hundreds, thousands, maybe millions. And if your plan fails, then we die trying to save others. Which is better than living knowing we could have helped and did not. The squad was quiet. The wind howled around them, carrying dust and cold. Bricks spoke first. The technical side of this. It will not be easy. Reactor overloads have safety systems. Multiple layers. Designed specifically to prevent what you are describing. Can you bypass them? Brix's antennae moved in a pattern that Dohyun recognized as uncertainty mixed with pride. I am the best tech specialist in our year. If anyone can do it, I can. But I will need direct access to the reactor control systems. And time. How much time? At least 20 minutes. Maybe 30. Dawn nodded. We can give you that. Sujin, what do you have in your kit? Sujin ran through her supplies mentally. 6 directional charges. 4 proximity mines. 2 smoke grenades. Enough to make some noise, but not enough to hurt a holoburn. We do not need to hurt it. We just need to guide it. Make it go where we want it to go. Dahyun pointed at the facility schematic. The reactor is in the center of the station. If we create a path of small explosions, we can herd the holoburn toward it. Like using fire to drive an animal into a trap. That assumes it follows the explosions, Orath said. It will. It is attracted to energy. Every explosion will be like ringing a dinner bell. Lyra had been quiet, her pale eyes distant. Now she spoke. There is another problem. The holoburn is currently between the facility and the researchers. If we want to save them, we need to draw it away first. Give them time to escape. Dahyun had thought about this. It was the part of the plan he liked least. The holoburn is attracted to concentrated energy signatures. The bigger the signature, the more it wants to consume it. So we need bait, Sujin said flatly. Yes, let me guess. You are volunteering. Dahyun reached into his pack and pulled out a device he had taken from the facility's abandoned armory during their simulation. It was a prototype plasma core designed to power experimental equipment. When activated, it produced an energy signature strong enough to be detected from kilometers away. If I strap this to my chest and activate it, the holoburn will sense me. It will not be able to resist. I will be the brightest meal for hundreds of kilometers. You will also be dead within minutes, Orath said. That thing will catch you and consume you. Then I will have to run fast. This is insane. Probably. Sujin grabbed Dohyun's arm, her grip tight. I have known you for 3 years. I have seen you do stupid things. But this is beyond stupid. You cannot outrun a holoburn. I do not have to outrun it forever. I just have to stay ahead of it long enough to reach the reactor chamber. Then Orath seals the doors behind me. Brix triggers the overload, and we find out if my theory is right. And if you do not make it? Dohyun met her eyes. Then I die, but the rest of you complete the mission. The researchers escape. And maybe, just maybe, the overload still works. Sujin did not let go of his arm. There was something in her eyes that Dohyun had never seen before. Fear. Not for herself, but for him. There has to be another way. she said. "If you can think of one in the next 10 minutes, I am happy to hear it." She could not. None of them could. Finally, Sujin released his arm. "When we get out of this, you owe me dinner." "Deal." Oreth stepped forward, his massive form blocking the wind. "I will be at the reactor chamber doors. When you come through, I will seal them. No matter what is behind you. Thank you, Oreth." "Do not thank me. I still think this is foolish. But if we are going to be fools, we should at least be brave fools." Brix extended one of his 4 arms. "I will have the reactor ready. I promise you, when you need that overload, it will happen." Do-hyun clasped the Tellurian's arm. "I know you will." Lyra moved closer, her silver skin glowing faintly in the dim light. "I will stay with the researchers. Guide them to safety while you draw the Hollowborn away." "And Do-hyun." She paused. "I see many possible futures. In some of them, you survive. Hold on to that. Some of them. Not all, not all. But some is more than none." Do-hyun nodded. It would have to be enough. They spent the next hour going over the plan in detail. Every step, every timing, every possible thing that could go wrong. Brix studied the facility schematics until he knew them by heart. Sujin calculated exactly where to place each charge for maximum effect. Oreth memorized the layout of the reactor chamber and the door mechanisms. Lyra focused her abilities, trying to sense the researchers' exact location and the safest path for their escape. And Do-hyun prepared himself to be bait as they made their way toward the facility. Moving carefully through the rocky terrain, Do-hyun felt strangely calm. Fear was there, somewhere deep inside, but it was buried under something else. Purpose. For 3 weeks, he had studied the Hollowburn, looking for a weakness that everyone said did not exist. Now he would find out if he was right, or he would die. Either way, he would have his answer. The facility appeared on the horizon, a collection of gray buildings half buried in the moon's surface. Emergency lights flickered through broken windows. Somewhere inside, 12 people were waiting to be saved. And somewhere nearby, in the darkness between buildings, something hungry was waiting too. "Ready?" Sujin asked. Do-hyun looked at his squad. These were his friends, his family, the people who had chosen to follow him into almost certain death. "Ready," he said. The plan was set. Now they just had to survive long enough to execute it. They entered the facility through a maintenance tunnel on the eastern side. The air inside was cold and stale, and emergency lights cast everything in a dim red glow. Pipes ran along the ceiling, some of them cracked and leaking steam. The floor was covered in dust and debris. "The reactor control room is 2 levels down," Brix whispered, his antennae twitching as he processed the facility's layout. "I can reach it through the service corridors. It should take me 10 minutes. Go," Do-hyun said. "And Brix, be careful. I'm always careful." The Tellurian disappeared into a side passage, his 4 arms helping him move quickly through the narrow space. The rest of the squad continued forward. According to Lyra's senses, the researchers were trapped in a laboratory on the western side of the facility. The Hollowburn was somewhere between them and the main exit. Moving slowly, consuming anything with energy, they reached a junction where the corridor split into 3 directions. Lyra pointed west. "The researchers are that way. I can feel their fear. They know something is hunting them. Go to them," Do-hyun said. "Guide them to the secondary exit on the south side. Once I draw the Hollowburn away, you should have a clear path." Lyra nodded, but she hesitated before leaving. "Do-hyun, thank you for not accepting the impossible. Thank me when this is over." She gave him a small smile, then turned and ran west, her silver form quickly disappearing into the darkness. Now it was just Do-hyun, Sujin, and Oreth. The reactor chamber is at the end of the main corridor, Orth said, studying his mental map. I will wait at the doors. When you come through, I will seal them behind you. And if I do not make it through, then I seal them anyway. The mission is more important than any one person. Orth's black eyes met Do-hyun's. But I would prefer if you made it through. So would I. Orth nodded once, then moved toward his position. His heavy footsteps echoed through the empty corridor until they faded into silence. Do-hyun and Sujin were alone. Charge placement, Do-hyun said. Show me. Sujin pulled up a holographic map on her wrist display and marked 6 points along the corridors. Here, here, and here. Small charges, timed to detonate in sequence. Each one will create a burst of energy that should attract the holoburn and guide it toward the reactor. And the proximity mines? At these 4 points. Backup plan. If the creature tries to go in a different direction, the mines will redirect it. Do-hyun studied the map. It was a good plan. As good as they could make with limited time and resources. How long to set everything up? 15 minutes. 20 if I want to be careful. Be careful. We only get one chance at this. Sujin looked at him, her dark eyes serious. When I am done, where should I go? The secondary exit. Help Lyra get the researchers out. If this works, there might be aftershocks. The reactor overload will release a lot of energy. And if it does not work, then get as far away as you can. Sujin stepped closer. For a moment, she did not say anything. Then she reached out and punched him in the shoulder. Hard. Ow, what was that for? For volunteering to be bait without asking anyone else. She punched him again, softer this time. And that is for being brave enough to do it anyway. She took a deep breath. Do not die, Kan Do-hyun. That is an order. You are not my commanding officer. I am today. She turned and ran before he could respond, heading to the first charge placement point. Her footsteps echoed briefly, then faded. Do-hyun stood alone in the red-lit corridor. Somewhere in the facility, a monster was hunting. 12 people were waiting to be saved. His friends were risking their lives on a plan that might not work. It was time. He reached into his pack and pulled out the plasma core. It was heavier than he remembered, a cylinder of metal and crystal that hummed with contained energy. When he activated it, the hum would become a roar. Every energy-sensitive creature within 100 kilometers would feel it, including the holoburn. Do-hyun strapped the device to his chest, securing it with multiple bands. His hands were steady. He was surprised to find that he was not afraid anymore. There was no room for fear. There was only the mission. He touched his communicator. Brix, status. The response came immediately, Brix's voice slightly distorted by static. I am in the control room. The safety systems are more complex than I expected. I need more time. How much more? 10 minutes. Maybe 15. That was too long. Once Do-hyun activated the plasma core, the holoburn would come for him immediately. He would have to run for 10 minutes through a facility he barely knew, staying ahead of a creature that had never failed to catch its prey. Do your best, Do-hyun said. I am activating the core now. Dawn, wait. I am not ready yet. If you activate it now, then I will just have to run longer. Get that reactor ready, Brix. I am counting on you. He cut the communication before Brix could argue. The activation switch was small, a simple button on the side of the device. Do-hyun placed his finger on it. This was it. No going back. He pressed the button. The plasma core came to life with a sound like a thunderclap. Energy poured out of it, invisible but powerful, a beacon of heat and light and radiation that lit up every sensor within range. Do-hyun felt warmth spreading through his chest, and his skin began to tingle. For a moment, nothing happened. Then he felt it. a coldness that had nothing to do with temperature, a darkness that seemed to press against the edges of his vision. Something ancient and hungry had noticed him, and it was coming. Do-yoon ran. The corridors of the facility blurred around him as he sprinted toward the reactor chamber. The plasma core bounced against his chest, sending pulses of energy into the air. Behind him, he could hear something. Not footsteps, not breathing, just a sound like silence getting louder, like the absence of everything growing closer. He did not look back. The first of Sujin's charges detonated somewhere to his left. A burst of light and sound, a pulse of energy that should attract the creature, keep it on the path they had planned. A second later, another charge went off, further ahead. Sujin was guiding it. Guiding him. Do-yoon turned a corner and nearly ran into a collapsed section of ceiling. Debris blocked half the corridor. He scrambled over it, scraping his hands on broken metal. Ignoring the pain dot behind him, the darkness was getting closer. He could feel it now, even without looking. It was like standing at the edge of a cliff and feeling the pull of the void below. The Hollowborn wanted him. It wanted the energy blazing from his chest. And it was very, very close. Another charge detonated. Do-yoon used a brief flash of light to orient himself. The reactor chamber was just ahead, maybe 200 meters. He could make it. He had to make it. His legs burned. His lungs screamed. The plasma core was getting hotter, the energy output increasing as it sensed the proximity of the Hollowborn. It was like carrying a sun against his chest. 100 meters. 50. The doors to the reactor chamber appeared ahead. Massive metal slabs designed to contain nuclear fire. Orth stood beside them, his gray hands on the control panel, ready to seal them the moment Do-yoon was through. "Move!" Orth roared. Do-yoon put everything he had into one final burst of speed. His vision narrowed to a tunnel, focused entirely on those doors. The darkness behind him pressed closer, so close he could feel it touching his back. Feel the cold spreading up his spine. 20 meters. 10.5. He dove. His body flew through the doorway, and he hit the floor hard, rolling across cold metal. Behind him, Orth slammed his massive hands on the controls. The reactor chamber doors closed with a sound like the end of the world. For a single heartbeat, there was silence. Then the Hollowborn hit the doors. The entire chamber shook. The metal groaned and bent inward, but it held. On the other side, Do-yoon could feel the creature pressing against the barrier, could feel its hunger like a physical force. "Bricks!" Do-yoon screamed into his communicator. "Now! Do it now!" The response came through waves of static. "The final safety is jammed. I cannot override it remotely. I need 30 more seconds." They did not have 30 seconds. The doors were bending further, darkness seeping through the cracks. The Hollowborn was forcing its way in. Do-yoon looked around the chamber desperately. The reactor stood in the center, a massive cylinder of metal and light, humming with contained power. Control panels lined the walls. And there, on the far side, he saw it, a manual override switch. He ran toward it, his legs barely holding him up. The plasma core was burning now, actual flames licking at his clothes. He did not stop. The doors behind him finally gave way. Darkness poured into the chamber. The Hollowborn was there, a void in the shape of something terrible, reaching toward him with appendages made of nothing. Do-yoon reached the switch. He pulled it. The reactor screamed. Energy that had been contained for years. Energy meant to power a facility for decades, all of it released in a single instant. Not an explosion. A pulse. A wave of pure power that filled the chamber like the birth of a star. The Hollowborn tried to absorb it. For a fraction of a second, it grew, feeding on more energy than it had ever consumed at once. Then it reached its limit. The feedback loop began. Energy that could not be processed turned inward, eating at the creature from the inside. The hollow burn twisted, contracted, collapsed. A sound came from it, not a scream, but something deeper. Something that made the fabric of space itself shudder. And then, with a flash of light so bright that Do-hyun saw nothing but white, the hollow burn simply stopped existing. The rescue shuttles found them 3 hours later. Do-hyun was barely conscious when the medical teams arrived. The plasma core had burned through his suit and left marks on his chest that would become scars. Radiation exposure had pushed his body to its limits. He drifted in and out of awareness as they loaded him onto a stretcher and carried him to the shuttle. He remembered fragments. Sujin's face, streaked with dust and tears, appearing above him. Her voice saying something he could not quite hear. Brix's antennae touching his forehead, a Tellurian gesture of respect and concern. Orith's massive hand squeezing his shoulder once before letting go. And Lyra, her silver skin glowing softly, her pale eyes filled with wonder. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." Then darkness took him. When Do-hyun woke up, he was in the medical bay of the Galactic Military Academy. White walls, clean sheets, the soft hum of healing machines working on his injuries. He tried to move and found that everything hurt. "Easy," a voice said. "You almost died." Several times, actually. Do-hyun turned his head and saw Sujin sitting in a chair beside his bed. Her arm was in a cast, and there were bandages on her face, but she was alive. She was smiling. "What happened?" Do-hyun's voice was rough, barely more than a whisper. "You mean after you pulled off the most insane stunt in the history of the Confederacy?" Sujin leaned back in her chair. "The researchers are safe. All 12 of them. Lyra got them out through the secondary exit, just before the reactor overloaded. No casualties. And the others?" Brix fried most of his communication implants trying to bypass the reactor safeties. "He's in surgery right now, getting them replaced. He's gonna be fine, but he says you owe him new equipment." She smiled wider. "Orith has a few bruises from when the doors gave way, but nothing serious." The big idiot actually tried to hold them closed with his bare hands when the Hollowborn started breaking through. "Probably bought you an extra 2 seconds. Do-hyun closed his eyes. They were all alive. His squad was intact. He had not gotten anyone killed. "And the Hollowburn?" he asked. "Gone. Completely gone." The science team spent 6 hours scanning the facility. There is nothing left. Not a trace. Your theory was right, Do-hyun. You overloaded it. We overloaded it. I could not have done it alone. No. Sujin's voice was softer now. You could not have. But you came up with the plan. You volunteered to be bait. You pulled the switch when everything was falling apart. She reached out and took his hand. This was your victory. Do-hyun did not feel like a victor. He felt tired, exhausted, like he could sleep for 1,000 years. But he also felt something else. Pride. Not for himself, but for his squad. For the people who had trusted him enough to follow him into the impossible. "What happens now?" he asked. Sujin was about to answer when the door to the medical bay opened. She quickly stood, snapping to attention. Instructor Velroth walked in. The old Karethi moved slowly, his 6 arms clasped behind his back. His black eyes scanned the room, taking in Do-hyun's condition, the machines, the bandages. He stopped beside the bed and looked down at the young human for a long moment. Cadet Kang. Do-hyun tried to sit up. Sujin helped him, propping pillows behind his back. "Instructor, I told you no weapon could halt a Hollowburn. You did, sir. You disobeyed a direct evacuation order. You endangered your entire squad. You used unauthorized equipment from a restricted armory. You triggered a reactor overload to cause billions of credits in damage to a Confederacy research facility." Do-hyun swallowed. Yes, sir. Velroth's mandibles clicked. It was a sound Do-Hyun had learned to recognize as something like a laugh. I have been teaching at this academy for 200 years, the instructor said. I have seen courage and foolishness in measures beyond counting. I have trained soldiers from every species in the known galaxy. And in all that time, I have never seen anyone look at an impossible enemy and think, I just need to feed it more. Sir, Velroth raised one of his arms, silencing him. The Confederacy Military Council convened an emergency session this morning to discuss your actions. There were calls for your expulsion. There were calls for criminal charges. The damage you caused was significant, and you violated multiple direct orders. Do-Hyun felt his heart sink. However, Velroth continued, there were also other voices at that meeting. The 12 researchers you saved. Their families. Several admirals who have lost ships and crews to hollow-burn attacks over the years and have prayed for exactly this kind of breakthrough. He paused. And me. You spoke for me, sir? I told them what I have told every class for the past century. That the hollow-burn could not be stopped. That our only option was to run. Velroth's black eyes seemed to soften, if that was possible. You proved me wrong, Cadet Kang, and I am not too old or too proud to admit when I am wrong. The instructor reached into a compartment on his uniform and pulled out a small metal case. He opened it and showed Do-Hyun what was inside. A silver pin in the shape of a star with a dark center. As of today, the Tactical Doctrine on Hollow-Burn Engagement has a new section. It is called the Kang Overload Protocol. The method you developed will be taught in every military academy in the Confederacy. Teams will be trained specifically to implement it. And when the next Hollowborn threatens innocent lives, we will finally have an option other than running. He placed the pin on Do-Hyun's bed. This is the Medal of Innovation. It is given to soldiers who fundamentally change the way we fight. You are the first human to receive it. You are also the youngest recipient in the medal's history. Do-Hyun looked at the pin, then back at Velroth. He did not know what to say. The instructor seemed to understand. Rest, Cadet Kang. Heal. When you are recovered, there will be debriefings and ceremonies and politicians who want to shake your hand. But for now, rest. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. And Cadet? Yes, sir. The next time you think the impossible might be possible, come talk to me first. I would rather help you plan than read about your success in reports after the fact. For the first time since Do-Hyun had met him, Instructor Velroth smiled. Then he was gone. Sujin exhaled loudly and dropped back into her chair. I cannot believe that just happened. Do-Hyun picked up the medal and turned it over in his hands. It was heavier than it looked. Neither can I. Over the next few hours, the rest of the squad came to visit. Brix arrived with new implants gleaming at his temples, his antennae moving excitedly as he talked about the technical challenges he had overcome. Arth stood in the corner, silent as always, but his eyes showed something that might have been pride. Lara sat on the edge of the bed and held Do-Hyun's hand, her silver skin warm against his. I saw many possibilities when we started this mission, she said. Many endings. But I have to admit, this one is better than I expected. What do you see now? Do-Hyun asked. Lyra closed her eyes, focusing her abilities. When she opened them again, she was smiling. I see a future where you do great things, Kang Do-Hyun. Where this moment is just the beginning. Where others look at impossible problems and think of you and find hope. That sounds like a lot of pressure. Perhaps. But I also see something else. What? I see a future where you are surrounded by friends. Where you never face the darkness alone. She squeezed his hand. That is the future I like best. Sujin groaned from her chair. If you two are going to be romantic, I am leaving. We are not being romantic, Do-Hyun protested. You are definitely being romantic. Bricks, tell them they are being romantic. Brix's antennae twitched in the pattern that meant amusement. I am a technician, not a relationship expert. But yes, that seemed romantic. Even Orath made a rumbling sound that might have been a laugh. Do-hyun looked at his squad. His friends. His family. They had followed him into the impossible, and they had come out the other side together. Thank you, he said. All of you. For believing in me. For trusting me. For running toward danger instead of away from it. Do not thank us, Sujin said. Just buy us dinner when you get out of this bed. Deal. Outside the window of the medical bay, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, other holoburn drifted through the void between galaxies. Other threats waited. Other impossible problems needed solving. But for now, 5 cadets sat together in a small room. Laughing and talking and being alive. And somewhere in the Academy's records, a new lesson was being written. A lesson that would be taught for generations. A lesson that said, sometimes, the impossible is just a problem no one has solved yet. Sometimes, all it takes is someone stubborn enough to try. Kang. Do-hyun closed his eyes and listened to his friends' voices. For the first time in weeks, he slept without dreaming of darkness.